Okay, a couple of minutes past, let's get going, shall we? So thanks very much for joining us today, everyone. Thanks, Caroline and Stephen. Hope you can all see everyone. So just before we start, Sabri, who was due to co-host with me today, unfortunately has been unable to make it. So sincerest apologies to anyone who was dialing in specifically to hear from Sabri. I was very much looking forward to hearing about the success that they've had with the team and the local community at Edmonton Green. The Ashdown Phillips team were the winners of the IWFM Impact Awards 2020 for supporting the community. So it would have been really useful to hear his views on this subject. But unfortunately, he sends his apologies, and we'll have to rearrange that for some time in the new year. And hopefully you'll be able to join that. So we had planned for this webinar to be about an hour long, but now we've only got 2 speakers. So the good news is you're probably going to get about 15 minutes back in your day, which I'm sure is welcome at this time of year. But it also means that we do have times for extra questions. So if you do have any questions that you'd like to pose, please put them in the Q&A box and we'll do our very best to answer as many as we can. But before we get started, it would be really useful to know where you feel you currently are in terms of this topic. So in terms of engaging with your community and how effective you think you are in that. So I'm just going to launch a quick poll, and it'll be really useful if you could answer it and let us know where you think you are. So the question is, how would you rate your current engagement with the wider community? Would you say it's excellent, okay, you could do a lot more, or are you in the what community box? We'll just give you a few minutes for people to vote. A few people are thinking about it. Another few seconds. Okay. So these are our results. So we've got 30% in excellent, 50% in okay, 20% could do a lot more. Okay. So our first speaker is Caroline. Caroline heads up the Retail Property Management Department at MAP, a firm of chartered property management surveyors, driving forward a leading property management service for landlords and investors. She has almost 20 years experience in the management of shopping centres, leisure parks and mixed-use destinations, working with key clients within the industry. She is responsible for the successful ongoing management of 4 Intuit shopping centres that transitioned to MAP last month. She's also amongst the judges of Sceptre Awards, the Revo Ace Awards and RICS Inspire Ambassador and a RICS Fellowship Assessor. We are happy to have any questions as you go along for Caroline, so pop them in the Q&A. But over to you then, Caroline, and look forward to hearing what you've got to say.
Brilliant, thank you, Nikki, and thanks everyone for joining. It's really, really good to see so many of you. Especially when everyone's so busy. So thanks very much for your time. Hopefully you can see this okay.
Yep.
I'm just going to do a short presentation, about 15 minutes, just to go through essentially why we engage with the local community and some examples of doing that, and just talk a little bit about Into, and then potentially COVID, and maybe we could open that up to the floor a bit later on in terms of what effect COVID has had, and what does next year look like. So first of all, why do we engage? And some of this is fairly obvious, I think, really, but I mean, you can hopefully take some nuggets away with you. The emphasis really I would like to put on local communities, as in putting back into the community. And the reasons why it's local is so important is because some of our customers will have had personal experience with these community engagement people that we're talking to, not just charities, but we're talking to local businesses and the likes of that. So they've had personal experience. They may have had a member of their family affected by some of the conditions that we're dealing with. So potentially it's quite close to people's hearts, which is what people get passionate about. So community engagement for shopping centres is grabbing hold of that passion and helping to put that back into the community. It's a win-win situation where the centre benefits and so does the local community. Obviously there's positive social media coverage. It would be a bit inappropriate, I think, to have negative coverage or negative social media comments for posts that are on our pages when they're talking about local charities and the initiatives that we're getting involved in. So it's generally going to always be positive, and that's, you know, positive for the whole community. It increases customer loyalty, it reduces crime and antisocial behaviour, not just in the centre, but that has been some proof and stats that actually it does decrease it within the community itself as well, which is brilliant. It generally increases footfall. It emphasises the centre's standing within the community and reinforces their brand and the image that this is a good place to go. This is a place where they do good things. And it improves occupier engagement and relationships generally. When you get retailers involved, that's obviously going to increase relationship and engagement with them. And it doesn't have to be financial. It doesn't have to be collecting money. It doesn't have to. It can just be raising awareness of charities or illnesses and conditions. For example, Purple Tuesday, where it's just one Tuesday in November, but it's raising awareness of a customer experience for disabled people, for example. And just some more examples of things to get involved in. Local charities and hospices. So Autism Hour, a lot of shopping centres have got involved in Autism Hour now. A nice quiet hour, which is, if you get involved with an actual autism charity, a local charity, they can advise you on what's more, if you're dealing with it in a sensitive way, so that you're dealing with it correctly, sensitively, you're getting the tone right, and the measures you're putting in place during that hour are appropriate for that condition. So it's not just raising awareness of the actual charity itself, but you're actually engaging in the centre in the correct way. And the same way with dementia for training for staff, you could get involved with a dementia local charity and get them involved with actually training the staff on how to deal with people with that condition. Obviously, you've got education, schools, colleges, universities and young apprenticeships that could get involved with. There's fitness and well-being, which you can make use of in a void unit, for example. Emergency services and other key workers. That's obviously been a biggie this year. And then retailers inside or outside the centre. This is an example here of engaging with retailers inside the shopping centre. This is an example at Wellgate Shopping Centre in Dundee that we manage at MAP, and they over the next couple of weeks they've got their retailers to donate anything really. We've got muffins, we've got Christmas jumpers, to members of the public just come into the shopping centre, randomly giving away these really cute feel-goody things, and it's just a case of making everyone feel good, bringing delight into people's day, as it says here, which is a really nice thing to do. And again, that's getting retailers in the shopping centre involved. And then we have this again is Wellgate in Dundee. This is a great initiative for local businesses. They were all asked to apply online to take part in a competition. So these are small businesses it's targeted at, where they actually, the winner gets 1 year in a shop, in the shopping centre. It's rent-free, service charge-free. They get 12 months membership of the Chamber of Commerce. They get £500 towards accounting. They get free marketing support, all in 12 months, just to support and help and engage with this retailer to try and build them up. And I don't know how they chose the winner, to be honest, because I wouldn't have been able to choose, but it was We Cook, proper tasty pies that they do, and the photos of the pies are absolutely phenomenal. So this retailer is going into the shopping centre for a year free. I think effectively all it is rates mitigation, and it's an empty unit, and it's making fantastic use of that. But it was obviously engaging the local community in terms of smaller retailers, and hopefully at the end of the 12 months they would have done so well that they'll take a unit within the shopping centre on a full lease. You just never know. And then just very quickly, just to mention Into, welcome Roz. Roz used to manage for Into. She was the asset manager on the potteries, so it's nice to have you here. We've got, as you probably aware, and Nikki mentioned it, we've got the management of 3 of the Into shopping centres which came on board in October. All 3 of these are fantastic schemes, not taking anything away from Into and their branding, but what we are doing now going forward is we're debranding, taking Into off, and making it the centre's own again. So taking it back to the community and giving it its own identity within the community, and we're doing that on all 3 schemes. And the SAW in Braehead is quite an unusual one because that was attached to the main shopping centre. The SAW is actually the leisure scheme that's now completely separate. So it's got to build up its own identity within the community by itself. So it's a brand new project that's really exciting, that next year is just going to be fantastic for them. And going forward, just a few comments on my thoughts on COVID this year. What effect has COVID had on the community engagement generally? Well, we've not been able to engage physically with our community, so I think that's been a major issue. But in terms of people working from home more, they've had to go to their local shops more, which we know. I think that's brought on more of a patriotic kind of feeling towards everyone's hometowns. I think we're going back home again, and I think that is going to encourage local, much more local emphasis going forward. I think next year is going to be quite exciting when it comes to local. And then what does the future hold? We don't know at the moment after COVID, but I think it's going to be interesting going forward to see how we can engage with the community and how that changes next year. So that's it from me. Thank you, Nikki.
No problem. So thanks very much for that, Caroline. So I've just popped into the chat box whether people agree with, are they seeing more people shopping more local, and do you agree with Caroline that we're going home and, you know, doing things a bit more local? It'd be really interesting to see, you know, to hear people's points of view on that. Has anyone got any questions for Caroline? No questions at the moment. Please do ask questions, I'm sure, or anything that you want to share. So Chetan, who's actually calling us from joining us from Muscat in Oman, so welcome. He says that he agrees that people are obviously needing to do a lot more local, and hopefully that will lead to further engagement and so on. I've got a question that I think is possibly for both of our panelists, and also for anyone if they want to get involved in the chat as well. Obviously, do you think that with the demise of Debenhams and Arcadia and obviously others that's happened, you know, very recently, unfortunately, that has or will result in empty units, will that make engaging with the community harder because there will be less people shopping? Or does this give us a further opportunity to better engage with the wider community and create, you know, community hubs and that kind of thing? So my local shopping centre is Jackson Square in Bishop Stortford, and they've got quite a large double space that always seems to be on kind of a rolling retailer, and nobody ever seems to stick there, and they've actually turned that into a community space. So will we see more of this, and is it a good idea? And I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
I would just comment first of all that I don't think it's going to reduce footfall by necessarily, but I think one size does not fit all when it comes to things like this, and I think every scheme that has a Debenhams or has a huge enormous vacant space, you're going to have to look inwards rather than blanket across the board. This is what we're going to do with all department stores or whatever. I think it is literally asking what the community what they want, rather than just what you think, basically.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Sorry, Caroline. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's an opportunity. You're absolutely right, Caroline, that every location is different. I think we tried to homogenise retail over the years in terms of putting the same brands in different towns, and that really hasn't worked. And it's clear that there's a structural change going on in terms of the types of retailers and the types of experience in different towns. So, I mean, for example, you saw today maybe Hammerson are looking at residential flats for their Debenhams scheme, their Debenhams unit in Leicester at High Cross. So again, that's an example of how that's going to change. That will change the whole complexity of that particular scheme. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we're seeing now in empty spaces where they're being used. You mentioned rates mitigation. I think that's going to increase. Some are actually setting up charitable organisations to offset rates and to almost plough the savings back into the community, to charitable organisations and entrepreneurs, that sort of thing. So yeah, I do think that there will be a continuation of that.
Okay. And we do have a question, the age-old question about where do you see e-commerce or online retailing versus shopping malls and centres at the moment? I mean, obviously with, you know, a lot more click and collect and things, you know, will the shops and the units look different, or do you have any view on that? I mean, I know that's quite specific around, you know, kind of online retail and so on, but do you have any thoughts on that, or does anyone else within the group would like to share?
Well, I was going to touch on that in my
sorry, Stephen.
Actually, but,
well,
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's not, there's no answer to that really. What I would say is that we're not going to all stay at home with the rest of our lives and just wait for packages to arrive. And when you actually look at the figures, you can see that once shops were shut, online went like that. Once shops opened, and it came back down like that. So people actually are venturing out, and the footfall has shown that, and certainly in certain locations as well. So we will always want to have that physical experience.
Brilliant. So why don't we go to your presentation then, Stephen, because I don't want to have lots of questions that you're already covering in your presentation. So I'll just do a quick intro for you. So Stephen, thanks for joining us. Stephen is Director of Property Management Research, heads up the property management research team at Savills, the only one of its kind in the UK property management sector. So he joined Savills in April 2010 and has over 20 years experience in research. So he covers retail analysis, occupier auditing and visitor profiling expertise. He looks at rent affordability analysis, profitability and risk analysis, rent collection analysis and coordination and analysis of turnover.
A lot of analysis.
A lot of analysis, yeah, from over 3,000 retailers and operators on a monthly basis. His work is used by clients worldwide, and his client base includes the Crown Estate, Landsec, Legal & General and Elandai. Stephen has also authored a report called The Relationship Between Online Sales and Physical Stores, and How are Stores Dealing with Returns? So without further ado, over to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Nikki, and hello everyone. Thanks for coming and joining us. I kind of wanted to put a bit of context behind the discussion here in terms of you know, engagement and in terms of specific sort of locations, and I wanted to sort of focus on, you know, what sorts of locations have responded this year in between lockdown. Obviously, it's been a very, very strange year, and maybe a few kind of pointers in terms of what are the themes which might emerge going forward. On the first slide, I kind of wanted to show how things are changing. This sort of strange picture, this almost looks like a strange prehistoric sea monster, is essentially online versus footfall versus store sales. It's very, very strange. I mean, if you know, the last few years we sort of bumped along really. We didn't see huge increases in footfall or big drops either, and the only real increase was, I suppose, in online, although that was kind of plateauing in the last sort of year or so. Obviously March hit, and you can see there the divergence of footfall and online. You have BRC and BDO. BRC includes online and removes closed stores, by the way. So that's why it's kind of, we haven't seen that big drop, because that's been very much propped up by online. BDO is essentially high street, so that just shows the difference. Well, what this says to me is that when you take physical stores out of the equation, that's what happens to online sales. They go through the roof. And as you can see, in June, when we started reopening, we're starting seeing that come back down, and you know, we are seeing that convergence again. So, you know, for me, physical stores act as a regulator for online sales. You know, they are the one thing that's stopping online sales being all encompassing. And listen, we had to shop online because we had no other choice. So, but when you've kind of given the choice, people will come back. There are some stats here in terms of sales growth over the last couple of years. It's interesting, actually, in 2018 at the bottom, and then 2019, we were actually seeing sort of increases and improvement in terms of sort of stores. Obviously this year, non-store, which is essentially online, has gone up 68%, sorry, and in stores down 40%. So that kind of puts it in perspective. But really what I'm trying to sort of point out here is that, you know, physical stores are the one thing that keeps us from you know, shopping online all the time, and I think that will continue. I've actually got some stats here in terms of footfall performance since the reopening of retail in the middle of June, and I've split this out between retail parks and shopping centres. what we found is that retail parks have recovered better over that period. I think for a number of reasons. I think that obviously they were open during lockdown, the first lockdown, a lot of essential retail there. And actually, I think the fact that they are more sort of edge of town and perhaps more accessible for people has meant that they have that they've sort of performed better in terms of footfall. And I think with shopping centres, yes, you had that maybe that perhaps reluctance to go in June. It was the first time we'd all been out for a few months. I suppose the other thing you should mention is the fact that it was summer and the weather was like, it was the height of summer. We then had things like Eat Out to Help Out in August, but then we obviously seen that sort of plateau in sort of September, and then you see that drop in October. However, I've got some stats here, and when we talk about the end of lockdown number 1, which is the middle of June, to basically the end of October to lockdown number 2, so the 15th of June to the end of October, over that period year on year, the super regionals were down 41% year on year. So we know what those are. I won't kind of name them, and I'm certainly not highlighting any individual ones, but they were down 41% year on year. City centres were down 46% year on year, and we know a lot of people obviously have been working from home, so we haven't seen that, if you like, migration into city centres. However, when you look at secondary locations and, if you like, community centres that we're looking at here, they were only down 35%. So there you go. That shows a clear difference in terms of the recovery, if you like, in footfall over that period. Okay, we are seeing numbers down year on year, but obviously that's there are good reasons for that. But you can certainly see that that there has been a clear improvement in the more secondary community locations. And actually, when you look at footfall out of the last lockdown, so we're actually looking at last week's footfall, very, very interesting when you see the locations as well. I'll come on to those. But we saw footfall down 22% on last year. This is the first day this was last week. And this compared with 32% reduction on the reopening of retail in June. So we actually did see an improvement. Shopping centres were down 28%, but again, that compared with a 40% drop in June. Retail parks were actually up year on year and were equal to June. And again, were for probably reasons we've mentioned. And when you actually look at tier 3 and tier 2 locations, tier 2 locations weren't down as much as tier 3. And again, that's possibly because people being more cautious, I suppose, in tier 3, fewer locations open as well. And I think as well that in the second lockdown, coming out of the second lockdown, you've obviously got Christmas on the horizon. I think people are probably a little less trepidation compared to June. People have they're a bit more used to going out and shopping, and I think there's that sort of pent-up demand too. So it's interesting to see how we have seen a bit of a normalising, if you like, coming out of lockdown too. And in terms of the actual locations that have performed best last week, I actually looked at around a sample of around 35 centres that we manage, and some of the best performing locations, and these are in no particular order, that beat the average. You can see them there. None of these could be considered sort of tier 1 sort of top locations, or apologies if anyone manages a scheme in any of these towns, but certainly the likes of the sort of Dagenhams, the Yardleys, Leamington Spa, Corby, these are very much the if you like secondary locations, and you don't see the big sort of centres within those. And it's interesting when you look at the average over the last week, about 40% down on average. The ones that performed worse than the average were the big cities and the super regionals. So it's actually the more, if you like, local shopping centres and local locations and secondary locations that perform better. So again, this really shows how these areas are doing much better. I've actually got some figures in terms of performance over Q3, in terms of what's done particularly well up to September, this is. So the first 3 months of lockdown, and value. And again, some of these locations have a big push on value. Value is the second best performing category in September, and certainly over the quarter. The best performing one was jewellery, and I'll show you a few brands on the next slide. What we've seen in jewellery is very much an example of, if you like, less frequent visits, but certainly higher conversion, higher average transaction values. A lot of the jewelers have actually resorted to one-on-one customer service or appointments. That's really helped to drive sales and drive conversion and average transaction values. But again, that sort of value-driven offer has certainly performed best. Those that haven't performed as well are the likes of clothing, so the women's wear, men's wear, mixed clothing. Again, that's probably a continuation of what we've seen in recent times. Very much at danger compared to online. You know, online it's a very, very competitive area there. So that's what we've seen in terms of category. And actually in terms of retailers, and we took a sample of the best and worst performing retailers over that 3-month period. These are all brands with a minimum of 5 stores in our locations. So it's not just 1 or 2. But as you can see, the likes of the Icelands, the Poundlands there, and the Works, those sorts of, if you like, sort of secondary sort of value retailers have done best over that period. In terms of the worst, you've seen the likes of Arcadia, Topman, you've got Debenhams there as well. I think Game have struggled in terms of the PS5 and sourcing of PS5. Interesting, the likes of Greggs, who've traditionally done very, very well, but people aren't going to those locations, so people aren't going out into sort of town centres and city centres, so that's done well for them. So that's a very sort of broad view of what's been happening out there. From my perspective, these are the sort of themes that I think will emerge from in 2021. We asked the question in terms of what will happen. Is there pent-up demand? I think absolutely there is. You know, we have been pretty much not all of 2020, but you know, for vast chunks of 2020, we've been in lockdown. Household debt has been paid down. A lot of people haven't been able to spend that money that they probably would have done. They want to come out. They want an experience. I think we will see that improvement. We've got the vaccines which are coming. I'm just reading that the Oxford vaccine has been considered safe. It's been peer reviewed. So there's another vaccine which is on the market. That has got to lead to an improvement in consumer confidence. Will we see that V-shaped recovery? There's every chance that we will. How long that will last long term, we'll have to see. But I think that's certainly something to consider. We've mentioned in terms of lower footfall. So people, and again, this is the thing we've seen for a while now, less frequent shopping, but not necessarily less spend, higher conversion, higher average transaction values. And again, I think that will continue. And certainly if there is this pent-up demand. What about things like click and collect and fulfillment? We're seeing a lot of stores that were shut during lockdown being used as dark stores, as almost like warehouses for deliveries. You know, I see that continuing. That's another good use of space, more localized, if you like, fulfillment. Click and collect, again, that's got to be a way to bring the community to engage with people. And even delivery, you know, our centres, should we be taking responsibility for delivering, especially to more vulnerable members of the community who maybe don't have the opportunity to do that. And again, there's a CSR angle to providing delivery services to customers in our area. So these are some of the things which we're looking at and to think about in the coming year. But I just wanted to give you a bit of background as to what has been happening there. So that's my bit. Hopefully you've learned something from there, but any questions, obviously, I'm happy to field.
I've got a couple of questions, actually. So Sophie has asked, I guess it was in response to one of your slides, Stephen, are those best performing schemes with food store anchors?
Good question. Some are, but from what I can see, no, generally speaking, they're not. I'm just sort of looking down my list here. I think the odd one might have a Tesco, the odd one might have a Sainsbury's. Well, no, generally these are sort of your traditional sort of retail locations with, a lot of big value offers as well. So, yeah, I think it's. I don't think food is necessarily a reason why people are going to these locations. It's certainly a driver, and it's one place that is one, if you like, sector that's held up well during the last year. But no, actually, I'd say that the vast majority are, as I say, traditional retail.
Okay, great. And Tom has asked, Charged Retail reported that Cyber Monday was down 10% on last year. Why do you think this is? Were shoppers saving their money to buy in store?
Well, I don't think that was a coincidence. The fact that shops were shut, but Cyber Monday went down. You may have seen the reports that the likes of CACI have done over the halo effect of stores, physical stores to online. So a physical store quite often has a positive effect on online sales in a catchment of a store, and I think that has certainly come into play here. I do also think that the retailers themselves have been found out a little bit. I think the likes of which have found them out that a lot of these so-called deals are actually no better than what you find any other time of the year anyway. So I think there's a couple of reasons for that. But yeah, I mean, both Black Friday and Cyber Monday were down. So I don't think you can separate physical retail from that. I don't think there's a coincidence.
Okay. Great. Does anyone else have any more questions? Just having a quick look through the chat to see if anyone else has put anything in there. No, there's no more questions. Stephen, Caroline, do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
Caroline?
No, nothing from me. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I suppose it's a shame that the likes of Sabri weren't on in ET's job at Edmonton Green, and that's a prime example of a centre which, you know, traditionally, you know, in a more hard-pressed area, which has really thrived. I mean, I can use examples of the likes of the Stratford Centre, which is next to Westfield. You know, when that was built and the Olympic Stadium, many people were saying, well, you know, that's going to suffer. I think the exact opposite happened. It consolidated its footfall. It almost improved for the sole reason that it engaged with its community, and it pitched itself as the alternative to Westfield, as the local centre for people, and it was very sort of welcoming. And I think if you put in the effort, it can certainly pay off to you know, continue that. And I've always been bullish about it. We're very bullish here at Savills, and I'm sure the likes of Caroline are too. But I think that, you know, retail is evolving, it's changing structurally, and that will continue. We are seeing a bit of a natural selection going on with retailers who've gone to the wall, so to speak. I think some of these have probably been a long time coming, and some of them haven't really adapted to the changes that took place in retail. And I think we will see almost a normalization of retail now, and a retail experience will be very different. You're going to see AR, VR, XR, and all these other acronyms which are thrown around that will enhance shopping. But there will always be different shopping locations. I think the days of homogenization of retail have gone, and every location, every town has to ask itself, you know, why would people go there? You know, what makes it stand out?
Okay, great. So Steve's got a question. What are the panelists' thoughts on office space, or the impact on vacant office space? He's put 2 points there.
I don't know about you, Caroline. You might be better placed. I mean, in terms of vacant office space, how will that change? I'm not quite sure. You know, we talk about mixed use now and repurposing. Yes, some of that will turn into office space. You have, you know, we're talking about hub and spoke offices now that are on the towns, which are kind of more local. We even talk about hub and roam, which is another way of where you can actually sort of roam around and go to different. Again, I would say it depends on the location. It depends on the you know, I suppose anyone who's investing in retail wants to see return. You know, the return on retail compared to resi and office are different, and that choice has to be made. But again, it is all dependent on the individual locations. I think people will come back to offices. I don't think we'll be in offices 5 days a week. There will be that sort of more flexible work, but I think that however offices evolve, again, a bit similar to retail locations, they have to give some people who want to go in there.
Absolutely.
There's got to be a place that you want to spend all day looking at here. We're moving. We're going to be looking at a new space that's a lot more appealing than the space we're in now. So, yeah.
I agree wholeheartedly. I do a lot of work in corporate office space and workspace, and a lot of people I'm speaking to are saying that there's got to be a reason to go into the office, and the hub and spoke and hub and roam things, I think, will become more and more used as people go to more regional, rather than, you know, people commuting long distances and so on. You know, everyone's had that work from home feel, and that the people commuting 2 hours to work and so on, I just don't think people are going to be willing to do it. So there's definitely going to be some changes there, without a doubt. Our next question, Rosalind says that she thinks the future for F&B is about sourcing local chefs and supplying a fully fitted kitchen. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, certainly sourcing local ingredients as well, from local farmers and local producers. That's a biggie. I'm actually married to a chef and he would totally agree with this. He'd certainly agree with the fully fitted kitchen idea. I like that. Yeah, I think that's, yeah, I would say so, Rosalind. Yeah, it's going to be a biggie. F&B is, it depends. The big chains, do they work, don't they work? Some do, some don't. Again, it could be down to location. But local chefs, again, it's all local. I think local is going to be really huge next year. And I love the idea of a fully fitted kitchen. Automatically, there you go, there's your kitchen. Anyone can, it's generic, anyone can use this kitchen. It's a great idea. Expensive, but you know, it's done then, isn't it? So yeah, I like that, Roz, yeah.
I think it's one option. I don't think we're never ever going to go to a restaurant again. Again, it's like shopping, isn't it? It's a social experience, it's a leisure experience. You know, we want to go out and meet people and be in kind of bustling environments with, you know, a bit of an experience where the chefs are a bit of a, you know, a bit of a character, or, you know, it's good service. I think that sort of dark store, almost the F&B dark store, yes, I'm sure that will persist. Again, I just think it will be one example, one option. I'd hate to think that would be that would be it across the board. I suppose just one additional thing on that. Again, I think with F&B, we over sort of extended. I think there were way too many concepts and different types. Certainly here in Manchester, I think we tried to sort of copy the London approach, and I just don't think it's a different culture here. There isn't a sort of a cafe society or an eating out culture that we saw, and we have seen a lot of those struggle. But at the same time, you know, would I rather have a sort of a dark kitchen or a restaurant? You know, give me the latter. There's a contest.
Absolutely. So thanks very much for joining us, everyone. Just wanted to obviously, Caroline and sorry, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Caroline and Stephen have very kindly said that if you've got any further questions, that you can, of course, drop them an email. So their details are on screen now. So if you've got any further questions, or if you've got any suggestions for any future webinar subjects. So the whole purpose of this webinar that we put together was really kind of out of, what a hideous year it's been for the retail sector, and well done to everyone for hanging on in there. But, you know, the idea was that we plan to kind of provide a community where we can discuss best practice and share ideas and support one another. So very much hope that you found today useful, and if you've got any further questions, please do drop us a note and we'd be happy to answer them. And again, if you want to discuss any future topics, we'd love to hear. And just remains for us to wish you all a very Merry Christmas, and very much hope that 2021, I mean, it's very exciting to hear the positive thoughts from Caroline and Stephen as to what they think the next year will hold, and it looks like local's going to be the way forward. But sorry, we're finishing a little bit early, but as I promised, you got that 20 minutes back in your day. So hope everyone has a great day, a great rest of their day, and thanks very much for joining us.
And good riddance to 2020.
Bye-bye, 2020.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.